I think what I'm going to do now is I took a little break and let everything dry there, is work on another pass for the orange. Since I already have some red mixed up here, even though it's, oh, there's a little bit of cool red in there. I'm not going to worry so much about that. It's only a little bit, and I'm sneaking up on the whole thing. And it's a little bit of both, and mostly I just want to make a nice yellow-orange. Maybe I should say orangey yellow. And once again, I'm going to start out and hold the painting so that gravity is working with me and pulling color down. I'm going to start out the top part of this orange where I really don't want it a whole lot darker with just water. You can hear the squeaking as you brush across the dried masking fluid. It's kind of interesting. But let's see. I'll start bringing in a little bit here and there of the orange yellow, and there are watercolor artists, who love to establish really dark things early on. I am not one of those. I do feel like the temptation is definitely there. After I say that, I bring in this pretty dark orange. I have just found over the years of painting that it's just so the values are so important to me. What's dark and what's light, and where it's dark and where it's light, and if you try to do too much too soon, invariably you find yourself wanting knowing that something has gotten a little darker than you wanted it to, and that's when you're in a bit of a pickle. Having a very good sense of where it's going from light to dark is critical, in my humble opinion. And so once again, this is sort of like the color study, in that the light area here represents the upper left corner. That's the lightest area, and then it's gradually, as we move down this way, it's a spherical shape, so it's not exactly the same as a square study, but same idea. Moving from light yellow to orangey yellow to orange, and eventually even more of that. I am going to let that be as it is. And next I'm going to hit the lower part of the bowl here. I'm a little confused why this color and this color seem different, because I'm fairly certain it's the same paint. I mix things around on a pretty regular basis, and could have been there was just a little bit of darker color in the other one, but I'm going to start making the bottom part of the bowl a little bit stronger. So mixing up some peacock blue. I hope that's in the frame there. A little bit stronger, more, I want to say stronger, concentrated. I squeezed out color there, which you may have seen, instead of just rinsing it out and tossing it down the drain. That's going to be your judgment call on how much you want to try to do that. But same kind of thing with the other shapes. The lower part of the bowl here is a rounded form, so the light source is coming from this way. So this part of the bowl is going to be receiving more light, so a lighter value, and as it moves away, we'll be receiving less light and becoming a darker value. I don't want to bring in paint that's too watery. Even though I had some mixed up there, it was still a little bit too watery. So you can tell it's a perfectly graduated gradation, and you're supposed to be laughing right now because obviously it's not, but I can either let it go and know that I'll be doing subsequent layers, or I can try to redefine where the water is, where the paint is. It gets tricky because it might start getting too watery and a little bit too hard to manage where the color is going or where the water is going. The more you practice that, oddly enough, the better you'll get. Now I got a big watery mess here, but let's see. If I move it over to that side, because once again, I know that the value is changing from light blue to darker blue, and that's all I'm trying to accomplish in this go around. Right here is a place to really watch, where especially where there's a point where the color and water are going to pool up. Pretty easy for that. Just kind of forget about that, and then it'll pool up pretty quickly and spill over when it gets too. So at this point I could try to bring in a little bit darker color. I feel like the first time I started painting this, I didn't really have a good distribution of the water. Didn't define the shape that well. I think I don't know. But There, that seems nice. I'm gonna potentially ruin it. No, I'm just gonna try to clean up this edge a little bit. And it's wet enough there. I'm pretty sure it's wet enough up there too, but I'm just gonna leave it as is, like that. At is, I think I said. And normally I would sort of like to let that dry, but perhaps I'll take a chance and hit this background shape. Background shape needs a lot. Everything is dry there. I'm thinking to myself, the background comes up to where that is still wet. I'm going to go for it anyway. This, which you're welcome to try or not, or you can let it dry. If I wasn't trying to do this efficiently for videotaping, I would stop and let that, take a hairdryer to that. This is the hockey brush, and hopefully you've heard me talk about it a little bit. Great way to wet a large area very quickly when you're trying to address a large shape that's going to be too large to manage with even this relatively big large brush. So large round, it's a medium round. So it wet the shape that I was going to be dealing with, not all the way to the edges of where that, to define the shape. I'm going to come back in and use my more refined tool to finish that part up. Being aware to not touch that wet part. And for now, I'm just, I think, well, I may not have talked about it yet. I'm going to mostly just use indigo. You can see I'm mixing it in with the peacock blue that was already there. And if you were in class, the background is really kind of a fun, you heard me talking about how the background is really kind of a fun thing to play with, just messing around with a lot of colors and creating grays and blooms and not worrying so much about it. I am, value-wise, I am keeping it a little bit lighter as it gets closer to the apple. But let's see, to prove a point, what if I mixed in some quinacridone rose with that bunch of color right there. And let me see, what if I brought in some of the quinacridone burnt orange over here. Yeah, that's pretty gray. What if I collected up some of this stuff here and squeezed it like this? Just as a fun way of making things sort of mix and gray out, but still be kind of interesting. I'm gonna get a thirsty brush and pick up some of that, especially the stuff that's touching the tape. So that's sort of a fun pass for the background. It's still quite wet in some places that I know it's going to get darker, so I'll bring in some even darker color. Ultramarine blue I haven't tried. Some more of the Quinn Rose. Let's see what that does over here. Yeah, it's cool. Violet grays. And this is a time to sort of try to let loose a little bit. I know my style and technique is different from a lot of wet and wet stuff. I do love wet and wet, but I do feel like oftentimes when people are teaching it, it's folks who have done it quite a bit and can make it look extremely easy. And while there's aspects of it that are easy, the aspect of knowing where it's getting dark and where it's not getting dark is in my humble opinion, critical. So it's a little more involved than just wetting down something, and at least if you're following something like this. There's a good example of why I would have dried that earlier. That could have gotten so pulled up that it just spilled over, which might have ended up really cool now that I think about it. But yeah, and what you saw me do just there was just grab a little, don't know if you've already seen me do that. Yeah, let's go that good. There's a whole lot of wet stuff going on, and I want it to dry with the paint heading that way. So I'm just gonna stick in something under here. Still, I wanted to make sure that guy doesn't go. When I do this, I'm trying to literally not touch the paper, but just make it like basically like a thirsty brush, a thirsty paper towel. It's very wet up here, and we'll probably dry with some backgrounds, but not to the point that it's gonna be too troubling, and in fact might be kind of cool. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry. Coming along though, nice.